How much of your life have you spent trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it? How many years have you performed, achieved, served, and sacrificed, hoping that finally this time they would see you, value you, love you? How many versions of yourself have you created, polished, and presented, only to watch them be dismissed, criticized, or simply ignored? Today I want to show you what happens on the other side of that exhausting performance. What happens when you finally stop? You know exactly what I'm talking about. The extra hours you worked hoping your spouse would finally say, "I'm proud of you," the weight you lost, the house you cleaned, the dinner you cooked perfectly waiting for recognition that never came, the phone calls to that parent who only ever pointed out what you didn't do, the volunteer work at church where you gave and gave and gave, and they still talked about you behind your back. You've twisted yourself into shapes that were never meant for your body. You've silenced parts of yourself that were crying to be heard. You've performed until your soul went hoarse. You've smiled when you wanted to scream. You've said yes when every fiber of your being was begging to say no. You've apologized for things that weren't your fault, just to keep the peace, just to maintain the fragile connection with someone who was never going to meet you halfway. And I want you to hear something today. You are not weak for wanting to be loved. You are not foolish for trying. You are not broken for hoping that this time things would be different. You are human. And humans were made for connection. But what if I told you that the exhaustion you feel isn't a sign that you need to try harder, but a sign that God is calling you to stop? What if your weariness is not a failure, but an invitation? What if everything is about to change? This is not just another video about self-worth. This is not motivational fluff or therapeutic advice. This is a revelation about the freedom that waits on the other side of performance. And I believe with everything in me that you're ready to receive it. Today, we're going to journey through 9 powerful truths about what happens when you finally stop performing for people who were never going to love you anyway. Each one is backed by scripture. Each one is illustrated by story. Each one carries a message that I believe the Holy Spirit wants to plant deep in your heart. And the 8th one, pay close attention to the 8th one, might be the very key that unlocks the freedom you've been desperately seeking. But before we begin, I need to ask you something important. Before we go any further, I want to invite you to do something powerful. Right now in the comments, write these words: I am done performing. I choose to be loved, not earned. This isn't just engagement. This isn't just participation. When you type those words, you are making a declaration. You are speaking into the spiritual realm. You are drawing a line in the sand and telling every spirit of performance, every lie of inadequacy, every voice that said you weren't enough, you are telling them, it's over. Your fingers on that keyboard are not just typing. They are prophesying your freedom. They are breaking chains that have been wrapped around your identity for decades. Now, if you haven't already, I want you to press the like button. Not for me, for the algorithm. Here's what most people don't understand. When you click that button, you are forcing YouTube's system to push this message to someone who is exhausted right now. Someone who has been performing for decades and doesn't even remember who they really are anymore. Someone who needs permission to stop. Someone who is lying in bed tonight, wondering if they'll ever be enough. You're not just liking a video. You're becoming a missionary with one click. You're extending a hand to a drowning woman you'll never meet. You're participating in her rescue. And if you're new here, consider subscribing. We're building something here, a place for the tired performers. A digital family for those who have spent their whole lives trying to earn love that was supposed to be free. Notification bell on. Don't let the enemy convince you to scroll past the next message God has for you. Now let's begin. Let me tell you about Ashira, whose name meant the one who sings for others. Ashira lived in a small village near the hills of Ephraim, in the days when Israel was still united under one king. She was known throughout the region for a gift that seemed to have been breathed into her at birth, her voice. When she sang, work stopped. When she sang, children grew quiet. When she sang, Even the elders would pause and close their eyes, tears streaming down weathered cheeks. Her voice was not just beautiful, it was anointed. People said that when Ashira sang, you could feel the presence of God hovering over the village like a warm cloud. Travelers would delay their journeys just to hear her. Sick children would ask to be carried to her door. But there was one person who never stopped to listen, her mother. Miriam was a woman hardened by loss. Her husband had died young, leaving her bitter and suspicious of joy. She had decided somewhere along the way that life was about survival, not celebration. Beauty was frivolous, music was indulgent, and Ashira's gift, the very gift that brought an entire village to their knees, was in her mother's eyes, useless. "Anyone can sing," her mother would say, looking away while Ashira's voice filled the evening air. "What have you done that's useful? Have you ground the grain? Have you mended the clothes? Have you done anything of value today?" From the time Ashira was small, her mother had been deaf, not in her ears, but in her heart. No matter how beautifully Ashira sang, her mother would find something to criticize. A chore left undone. A meal not seasoned properly. A mistake from 3 years ago that still needed discussing. So Ashira did what many daughters have done before her, and many will do after. She stopped singing. She buried her voice like a treasure she was ashamed to own. She learned to weave. She learned to cook. She learned to work the fields until her hands bled and her fingers cracked. She became excellent, impressive, even at a dozen practical skills. And still, her mother's approval never came. "The weaving is good," her mother would say, "but your sister's is better. The bread is acceptable, but you put too much salt." Always a criticism, always a correction, always something missing. Ashira bent herself into smaller and smaller shapes, trying to fit through a door that was never going to open. One evening, when Ashira was already well into her middle years, her voice nearly forgotten, her joy a distant memory, a traveling prophet passed through the village. He was a strange man, dressed in simple robes, with eyes that seemed to see things others couldn't. He heard the villagers speak of Ashira's gift, and he asked why she no longer sang. "She works now," they said. "She's practical. She's given up childish things." The prophet found Ashira bent over a loom, her once graceful hands now rough and calloused, tears falling silently into the fabric she was weaving. He watched her for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Daughter, your song was never meant for your mother." Ashira looked up, startled. How did he know? "You have been singing to the wrong audience," the prophet continued. "The creator of the universe placed that gift in your throat. The heavens lean in when you open your mouth. Angels pause their eternal worship to listen when you sing. But you have been so desperate for one woman's approval that you silenced the very thing that makes heaven jealous." Ashira wept, not from sadness but from recognition. She had spent her entire life performing for someone who was never going to applaud. She had dimmed her light for someone who preferred darkness. She had killed the song to please someone who hated music. The prophet spoke once more. "Sing again, not for her. For him, for the one who gave you the voice in the first place." And Ashira did. That night, for the first time in decades, she sang. And the village wept, and the heavens rejoiced. Her mother still didn't listen. But Ashira finally understood. That was never the point. Why am I telling you this? Because some of you have spent years, decades performing for the wrong audience. You have silenced your gifts, buried your joy, twisted yourself into shapes that hurt, all for people who were never going to love you anyway. The parent who was never satisfied. The spouse who never noticed. The boss who never acknowledged. The friend who always found fault. Here's the truth. The performance was never the problem. The audience was. You have been singing for the deaf, dancing for the blind, pouring water into a bucket with no bottom. God is saying to you right now, stop singing for those who cannot hear. I have been listening all along. I have been applauding from the beginning. Turn around, look up. Perform for the audience of one, the one who has always loved your song. Let me share something with you from the book of Romans. Paul writes, "But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." Romans chapter 5 verse 8. I want you to sit with those words for a moment. While we were still sinners, not after we cleaned up, not after we performed well, not after we proved ourselves worthy, not after we earned it. While we were at our worst, broken, failing, unimpressive, undeserving, God loved us. This is unconditional love. Love without conditions. Love without auditions. Love without performance reviews. Love that doesn't increase when we do well and doesn't decrease when we fail. And here is what happens when you truly encounter this kind of love. It exposes every other love as conditional. When you taste unconditional acceptance, when you experience what it feels like to be loved, without earning it, suddenly you see with terrible clarity how conditional everyone else's love has been. Suddenly you see it. The parent whose love came with strings attached. I'll be proud of you when. I'll accept you if. You'll have my approval once. The spouse whose affection depended on your performance. Who was kind when you served but cold when you had needs. Who loved the version of you that made their life easier but rejected the version of you that needed support. The church that loved you when you volunteered but forgot you when you rested. The friends who celebrated you when you were fun but vanished when you were struggling. The family members who praised you when you succeeded but shamed you when you failed. Some of you right now are realizing something painful. You've been calling conditional acceptance love your whole life. You've been grateful for crumbs because you never knew what a feast looked like. You've been satisfied with performance-based approval because you didn't know another kind of love existed. But God's love is the feast. And once you taste it, really taste it, the crumbs become unbearable. This isn't ingratitude. This is awakening. You're not being demanding when you notice the conditions. You're not being ungrateful when the crumbs no longer satisfy. You're waking up. You're seeing clearly. You're realizing that what you called love was actually a contract, and you've been the only one fulfilling your end of the deal. The clarity hurts. Oh, how it hurts to realize that the love you were killing yourself to earn was never really love at all. But the hurt leads to freedom. Because once you see the conditions, you can finally choose. Keep performing for conditional acceptance, or stop and receive the unconditional love that was always available. Let me tell you about Nathaniel, whose name meant gift of God. Nathaniel was a merchant in the port city of Joppa. In the days when ships from Egypt, Phoenicia, and distant lands would fill the harbor with exotic goods and foreign languages. He had built his business from nothing, starting as a boy carrying cargo, working his way up to owning 3 ships and a warehouse. But Nathaniel was known for something beyond his business success. He was known for his generosity. His door was always open. His table was never empty. Travelers without lodging knew they could find a warm bed at Nathaniel's house. Merchants who had been cheated knew Nathaniel would help them recover their losses. The poor knew that if they knocked on his door, they would not be turned away empty-handed. Everyone loved Nathaniel. Everyone praised Nathaniel. Everyone wanted to be Nathaniel's friend. But there was a truth Nathaniel never spoke aloud, a secret he kept even from himself. He gave because he was afraid. Afraid that if he stopped giving, everyone would leave. Afraid that his worth was tied to his usefulness. Afraid that the moment he had nothing to offer, he would have no one. His generosity wasn't generosity at all. It was a payment, a transaction, a desperate attempt to purchase love with open hands and an open home. One day, the wind betrayed him. A great storm, the kind old sailors still whisper about, swallowed his finest ship whole. Every crate of spices, every bolt of silk, every jar of precious oil, sunk to the bottom of the sea in a single night. The losses didn't stop there. Within weeks, his second ship was seized by creditors. His warehouse was claimed for debts. His home, the home that had welcomed so many, was sold. Nathaniel, who had once been the richest man on the waterfront, found himself with nothing. And in the weeks that followed, something terrible happened. The travelers stopped coming. Why would they? There was no bed to offer. The friends stopped visiting. Why would they? There was no wine to pour. The merchants who had eaten at his table for years suddenly forgot where he lived. The neighbors who had praised his generosity now crossed the street to avoid him. His home, once filled with laughter and music and the clatter of dishes, became quiet, quieter than Nathanael could bear. He was devastated. He had given everything, and when he had nothing left to give, they had nothing left for him. The transaction was complete. The payment had stopped. So the relationship ended. Nathanael sat in the empty room where he had hosted hundreds, and he wept. But then, something else happened. Something he didn't expect. His wife Sarah stayed. She had never needed his money. She had married the man, not the merchant. His children stayed. They didn't care about the ships. They wanted their father. 3 friends, only 3, out of the hundreds he had entertained, stayed. They came not for what he could give them, but simply to sit with him in his pain. And in the silence of his empty home, Nathanael finally heard God speak. Now you know who loves you. Now you know who was here for the gift and who was here for the giver. I didn't take your wealth to punish you, Nathanael. I took it to reveal the truth. The storm was not your enemy. The storm was your teacher. Why am I telling you this? Because when you stop performing, some relationships will die. Some people will leave. Some connections you thought were unbreakable will snap like dry twigs underfoot, and it will hurt. Oh, how it will hurt. You'll check your phone and see no messages. You'll wait for calls that don't come. You'll realize that people you served for years won't serve you for a single day. But you need to hear this. The relationships that die when you stop performing were already dead. They were zombies, empty shells. They looked like relationships, sounded like relationships, went through the motions of relationships, but there was no life in them. They were being kept alive by your effort, your sacrifice, your exhausting one-sided labor. God doesn't remove people to punish you. He removes them to reveal the truth, to show you who was really there, to clear away the counterfeit so the genuine ones can be seen. The loss is real, grieve it, but know this. You are not losing love. You are losing the illusion of love. And that loss, as painful as it is, sets you free. Let's go to the Gospel of Mark, chapter 6. Jesus returns to his hometown of Nazareth. The boy who grew up in their streets, who played in their fields, who helped in Joseph's carpenter shop, that boy is now the talk of all Israel. He's performing miracles. He's teaching with authority. He's drawing crowds by the thousands. People are traveling for days just to touch the hem of his garment. Now he's come home. You would think they'd be proud. You would think they'd be celebrating. You would think they'd be saying, "That's our Jesus. We knew him when." But when he stands up to speak in the synagogue, listen to what happens. "Where did this man get these things?" they asked. "What's this wisdom that has been given him? What are these remarkable miracles he is performing? Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us?" And the text says something devastating. They took offense at him. Offense. The very people who should have been first to celebrate were first to criticize. The hometown that should have been proud was embarrassed. The family and friends who watched him grow up couldn't accept who he'd become. And Jesus said something that echoes across 2,000 years. A prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his relatives, and in his own home. Did you hear that? Among his relatives, in his own home. The Son of God, perfect, sinless, filled with the power of the Almighty, loved by the Father before time began, was rejected by his own family. His own neighbors, the people who should have known him best, couldn't see him at all. And the text tells us something remarkable. He could not do any miracles there except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. Their inability to receive him limited what he could do for them. Their rejection didn't diminish who he was, it diminished what they could receive. Now let me ask you something. If Jesus could not earn the approval of everyone close to him, What makes you think you can? Some of you have been carrying shame for decades because your mother doesn't accept you, because your father never said he was proud, because your siblings don't respect you, because your hometown never celebrated your growth. You've been working, striving, performing, trying to prove yourself to people who made up their minds about you a long time ago. You're still the carpenter's kid to them. You're still Mary's son. You're still who you were at 12, at 15, at 20, no matter what you've become. But Jesus shows us something liberating. Rejection by family doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Sometimes it means there's something wrong with their ability to see. Their offense is not your sentence. Their blindness is not your identity. Their refusal to receive you is not proof that you're unreceivable. Jesus didn't stop being the Messiah because Nazareth rejected him. He simply moved on to people who could receive him. He went to Capernaum, to the Gentiles, to the sinners and tax collectors, and broken people who had enough humility to see who he really was. And maybe, just maybe, it's time for you to do the same. Stop performing for Nazareth. They've made up their minds. Go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. Find your Capernaum. Find the people who can actually see what God has put in you. Paul writes to the Galatians, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." Galatians chapter 5 verse 1. A yoke of slavery. That's what performance is. It's not just exhausting, it's enslaving. When you perform for love, you are a slave to the person whose approval you're seeking. Their mood becomes your master. Their opinion becomes your oxygen. Their attention or lack of it determines whether you have a good day or a bad day, whether you feel valuable or worthless, whether you can breathe or feel like you're suffocating. Think about it honestly. How many mornings have started hopeful, filled with possibility, only to be ruined by a single text from that person, a single critical comment, a single dismissive glance, a single rolled eye? How many good days have been destroyed by their silence, their failure to notice, their withholding of the approval you desperately needed? You were fine until you checked your phone. You were peaceful until they walked in the room. You were secure until they reminded you, with a word or a look, that you still hadn't measured up. That's not freedom. That's chains. Invisible chains, yes. Chains that no one else can see. But chains nonetheless. Some of you right now are slaves to a parrot who's been dead for 20 years. They're in the grave, but you're still dancing to their tune. You're still performing for their ghost. Still hearing their voice. Still trying to prove something to a person who can no longer hear your proof. You're haunted by their disappointment, even though they can't be disappointed anymore. You're trying to earn approval from someone who no longer has opinions, and you'll never get it. Not because you're not enough, but because the dead don't give permission slips. Some of you are slaves to a spouse who made up their mind about you years ago. They looked at you, evaluated you, and filed you in a category labeled not enough. Nothing you do will change their narrative. You could win the lottery, lose 50 pounds, cure cancer, and walk on water, and they would find something to criticize. But you keep dancing, keep performing, keep hoping. Like a prisoner rattling the same locked door day after day after day, convinced that this time, surely this time, it will open. This is what Jesus came to free you from. Not just sin in the afterlife, but slavery in this life. The slavery of performance. The bondage of earning what was always meant to be freely given. Stop rattling the door. It's locked. It's been locked the whole time. You're not going to open it with more effort, more sacrifice, more bending, more breaking yourself. But here's the truth. There's another door. One you've been afraid to walk through. The door of freedom. The door of stopping. The door of finally saying, I'm done performing for people who won't love me anyway. That door is open. It's always been open. Jesus is standing at that door, and he's saying, come, rest, be free. Let me pause here for just a moment. If what you're hearing is speaking to your spirit, if something inside you is saying, yes, this is me, this is my story, this is my pain, I need you to do something. Don't keep this to yourself. Think of one person, just one, who needs to hear this message. Maybe a sister who's been performing for a mother who will never be satisfied. A friend who's been bending over backward for a spouse who doesn't notice. A mother who's been dying inside, trying to please adult children who take her for granted. Someone came to mind just now. Don't ignore that. Share this video with them. Send them the link. Text it right now while you're thinking about it. Just say, I thought of you when I watched this. You might be the angel they've been praying for without knowing it. You might be the lifeline that pulls them out of decades of slavery. Your share could be their salvation. Now let's continue. Here's something most people never consider. Something that might change everything for you. When you perform, you're actually hiding. The performance is the mask. The carefully constructed version of yourself. The one that never complains, always helps, never has needs, always has energy, always says yes, always keeps the peace. That's not you. That's a character you created to survive. You built that character a long time ago, probably when you were still a child. You learned that the real you, with needs, with limits, with emotions, with wants, wasn't safe, wasn't acceptable, wasn't loved. So you created someone else, someone more palatable, someone easier to love, someone who didn't make waves or take up space, or have the audacity to want something for herself. And for years, maybe decades, that character has been doing all the work. She's been the one going to the parties, making the dinners, sending the birthday cards, showing up to the meetings, saying the right things, smiling the right smiles. But she's not you. And when you stop performing, the mask comes off. And that terrifies you, because behind the mask is the real you. The you with needs. The you with limits. The you who sometimes fails and sometimes cries and sometimes gets angry and sometimes is just too tired to pretend anymore. The you who isn't always pleasant. What you're really afraid of isn't that they'll reject you. Think about it. You've been rejected your whole life while performing. You're used to that. You've become numb to that rejection because you could always tell yourself, they're not rejecting the real me. They're rejecting the performance. The real me is safe, hidden, protected. What you're afraid of is that they'll reject the real you. The you that you've been protecting behind the performance. The vulnerable, unpolished, imperfect you that's been hiding backstage all these years. If the real you comes out and gets rejected, there's nowhere left to hide. But here's what God is saying to you right now. The real you is the only you I've ever loved. I've been waiting for you to stop hiding so I could love you fully. I've been standing at the door of the theater, waiting for you to step off the stage and come home. Your performance was never for me. I saw through it from the beginning. I've always seen you, the real you, and I've loved what I've seen. Some of you have been performing for God too. Serving in church not because you love it, but because you're afraid God will abandon you if you stop. Praying the right prayers, saying the right words, doing the right things, not out of love, but out of fear. Hear this clearly. God's love is not triggered by your performance. God's love is constant. It was there before you did anything, and it will be there when you can do nothing. It was there when you were still in your mother's womb, before you could perform a single action. It will be there when you're old and frail and can't do anything for anyone. His love is not a reward for performance. His love is the foundation underneath everything. When you stop performing, you don't become less lovable. You become finally, fully, truly seen. And being seen is terrifying. But it's also the only path to being truly loved. Let me tell you about Selah, whose name meant pause and reflect. Selah was a woman who had spent 40 years caring for her mother, Deborah. 40 years of cooking her meals, washing her clothes, adjusting her pillows, listening to her complaints. 40 years of setting aside her own dreams, her own needs, her own desires. When Selah was young, she had wanted to travel. She dreamed of seeing the great cities, Jerusalem, Damascus, perhaps even Rome. She imagined marriage. children, a home of her own with a garden where she could grow herbs and flowers. But her father died young, and her mother grew ill, and Selah was the only daughter, so she stayed. She stayed when her friends married. She stayed when her younger brother moved away. She stayed when her hair turned gray and her joints began to ache. She stayed when the dreams she once had became distant memories, faded like cloth left too long in the sun. And in all those 40 years, her mother never once said thank you. The soup is too salty. You forgot to mend my shawl. Your brother would have done it better. Why are you so slow? Every day, a complaint. Every kindness taken for granted or criticized. When her mother finally passed, everyone expected Selah to feel relief. Surely she's glad it's over, they whispered. Now she can finally live, but instead, Selah felt something she wasn't prepared for. Grief. Not grief for her mother's death, that grief would come later, complicated and strange, but a different kind of grief. A grief she couldn't name at first. Grief for her own life. Grief for the years she would never get back. Grief for the dreams she had buried so deep she could barely remember them. Grief for the places she never saw, the children she never had, the love she never experienced. Grief for the woman she might have become if she hadn't spent 4 decades performing for someone who would never be pleased. She wept for weeks, not at her mother's grave, but alone in the house that had been her prison. She wept for the young girl who had wanted so much and received so little. She wept for 40 years of her one precious life, spent on someone who never appreciated a moment of it, and people didn't understand. Why are you crying? She was difficult. You should be relieved. But Selah couldn't explain. She was grieving something they couldn't see. One evening, a wise elder named Hannah found Selah weeping by the well at the edge of the village. Hannah sat beside her in silence for a long time. Then she spoke. Selah, you are not weeping for what was. You are weeping for what could have been, and that is a holy grief. Do not let anyone rush you through it. Do not perform your way through this too. Let it flow. Feel every drop of it. Because on the other side of this grief is something you have never known. The rest of your life. Grief. Selah looked up, her eyes red and swollen. The rest of my life? I am old now. The rest of my life is nothing. Hannah shook her head. The rest of your life is everything. It is the first part of your life that belongs to you. Grieve what you lost. But then when the grief has done its work, stand up and live. Why am I telling you this? Because when you finally stop performing, you won't immediately feel free. That would be too simple. First, you will feel grief. Grief for the years wasted. Grief for the love never received. Grief for the person you could have become if you hadn't been so busy becoming what they wanted. This is normal. This is healthy. This is necessary. Don't skip the grief. Don't perform your way through this. Putting on a brave face, pretending you're fine, rushing to the next thing. Let yourself feel the loss. Let yourself cry for the time you'll never get back. Let yourself mourn the relationships that were never real. Because on the other side of the grief is something you've never experienced. Freedom, real freedom. The freedom of no longer performing. The freedom of finally being yourself. And it's worth every tear. This is the one I told you to pay attention to. This is the key that unlocks everything else. Here's what I've learned, and I want you to receive this deep in your spirit. God is always trying to send you people who will love you without conditions. People who don't need you to perform. People who see the real you, the unpolished, imperfect, sometimes messy real you, and stay anyway. But these people cannot enter your life if every seat at your table is taken by people who demand performances. Think of your heart like a home with limited rooms. Every relationship takes up space. Every person you're trying to please occupies part of your emotional capacity. You only have so much energy, so much time, so much heart to give. If every room is filled with exhausting, conditional, never satisfied people, where will the healthy ones go? If all your energy is going to performing for people who won't love you anyway, What energy is left for people who would? God has relationships waiting for you. Friendships that will feel like rest instead of work. Family, chosen family who will celebrate your true self instead of demanding a performance. Perhaps even a romantic love that doesn't require you to shrink, to hide, to pretend. But they're standing at the door, and there's no room at the inn. When you stop performing for people who won't love you anyway, you're not just saving your energy. You're not just protecting your peace. You're making room for what God wants to send. Making room for the relationships that will actually nourish you. Making room for people who will love you the way you deserve to be loved. Some of you have been praying for years, God, send me real friends. Send me people who love me for me. Send me healthy relationships that don't leave me exhausted. And God is answering. But here's what He's saying. I have sent them. I have been sending them. But you keep entertaining the counterfeit, so the real ones have nowhere to land. You keep setting places at your table for people who poison you, so there's no room for those who would feed you. Stop giving your best to people who give you their worst. Make room. Clear the table, create space. Tell the performers, the show is over. Tell the conditional lovers, I'm no longer auditioning. Tell the people who only showed up for what you could give them, the giving is done. And then watch. Watch what God does with the empty space. Your people are coming. But they need you to evict the ones who were only there for the show. Let's go to Matthew 11, one of the most beautiful invitations in all of Scripture. Jesus speaks, and His words are for you today. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Notice what He says. Rest for your souls, not just rest for your bodies. Not just a good night's sleep. Not just a vacation or a day off or a few hours of quiet. Rest for your souls. The deepest kind of rest. The kind of rest that reaches down into the places you've been hiding. The kind of rest that relaxes muscles you didn't know you'd been clenching. The kind of rest that comes when you're no longer pretending. You've been carrying a heavy yoke, the yoke of performance. The yoke of proving yourself. The yoke of earning love that should have been free. And it's been crushing you. But Jesus offers a trade. His yoke for yours. His burden for yours. His yoke doesn't require you to perform. His yoke doesn't demand that you earn your place. His yoke doesn't tighten when you fail or loosen only when you succeed. His yoke is easy. His burden is light. Some of you are physically exhausted. Yes, you're tired in your body. You need sleep, need rest, need someone to take care of you for once instead of always being the caretaker. But the deeper exhaustion is in your soul. You're tired of being someone you're not. Tired of smiling when you're broken. Tired of saying, I'm fine when you're dying inside. Tired of the endless grinding, thankless performance. You're tired of pretending you don't have needs. Tired of acting like you don't have limits. Tired of playing a character that you can't even remember choosing. Jesus offers a different way, not performance presence, not earning receiving, not proving resting. You don't have to audition for His love. The audition is over. You already have the part. You were cast before you were born. Come, rest, be yourself. That's what the Father is saying to you right now. Stop performing. Stop striving. Stop trying to earn what I've already given. Come home. I've missed the real you. I've been waiting for the real you. And I love the real you, the you behind the mask, the you underneath the performance, the you that you've been afraid to show anyone. Come, rest, be free. You made it. You stayed until the end. And that alone sets you apart. Most people scrolled away after 5 minutes. Most people can't handle messages that cut this deep, that expose this much, that call them to this kind of change. But you stayed. All the way through, you received. You let the truth wash over you. And I believe that's not an accident. God brought you here for a reason. Out of all the videos you could have watched today, out of all the ways you could have spent the last 40 minutes, you were guided here, to this message, to this moment. Something in these words was meant specifically for you. A key for your lock, a balm for your wound, a permission slip for your freedom. If this message touched something in your spirit, if you felt something shift, something crack open, something finally break free, I want you to do something right now. Go to the comments and write, "I'm done performing. I choose rest over applause." This is your declaration. This is your line in the sand. This is you telling heaven and hell and everyone in between that the performance is over. When you write those words, you are prophesying your own freedom. You are making a covenant with yourself and with God. You are announcing to the spiritual realm that the old way of living is finished. This is how I'll know your name is among the free. This is how I'll know you received what God sent through this message. Write it now. Don't scroll past. Don't say you'll do it later. Make the declaration while the fire is still burning. If you haven't liked this video yet, this is your moment. When you press that button, you're not just supporting this channel. You're not just giving me a number to look at. You're helping YouTube push this message into the lives of women who are still trapped in the performance. Women who are still dancing for people who won't clap. Women who have forgotten who they really are behind the mask. Women who are one video away from finally stopping. Your like could be their permission slip. Your one click could be someone's breakthrough. You could be participating in a miracle right now. If you're not subscribed, let me ask you honestly, why not? You've received something today, something real. Something that could change your life if you let it. Something you probably needed more than you realized when you clicked on this video. Don't be the one who receives and walks away. Don't consume without contributing. Don't take the bread and ignore the baker. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Become part of this family. Because we're not just a channel here. We're a community of people who are learning to be loved instead of earning it. People who are discovering that their worth isn't based on their usefulness. People who are taking off their masks together. You belong here. Subscribe. Stay. Now, let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you've been drowning. Thrashing in cold water for years. Exhausted from trying to stay afloat. Arms burning. Lungs aching. Ready to give up. And suddenly, someone throws you a life vest. You grab it. You breathe. You survive. But when you look around, you see others still in the water, still thrashing, still drowning, still exhausted. And they don't have what you have. Would you keep the vest to yourself? That's what this message is, a life vest. And someone you know is drowning in performance right now. Drowning in the desperate need for approval. Drowning in the exhaustion of earning love that should be free. Share this video. Copy the link. Send it in a text. Post it on your story. Tell someone, you need to watch this. Be the rescue someone is praying for. You don't know whose life you might save with a single share. One final thing. If you want me to pray for you personally, by name, I want you to write your full name in the comments. I read every single one. I don't just glance at them, I read them. And I want to lift your name before God in my daily prayers. Write your name, let me cover you. Let me stand in the gap for you as you learn to stop performing and start living. Your name is not just a word, it's an identity. And I want to speak it before the throne of grace. Before you go, I want to pray over you. If you can, close your eyes. If you're driving, keep them open, but quiet your heart. Take a deep breath. Let everything else fade away, the notifications, the to-do list, the people who are still waiting for your next performance. Just for this moment, let it all go. For this moment, it's just you and God is not asking you to perform. Father God, I thank you for the one listening right now. I thank you that this is not a coincidence. You orchestrated this moment. Out of all the videos they could have watched, out of all the things they could have done with this hour, you brought them here to this message, to this truth, to this invitation. Lord, I pray for the performer who is exhausted, the one who has been dancing for approval their whole life, the one who doesn't even remember what their real self looks like because they've been wearing masks for so long. Take the mask off, God, gently, lovingly. Show them that the face underneath, the real face, the vulnerable face, the imperfect face, is the one you've loved all along. I pray for the one who is realizing that some relationships were never real, that some people were only there for the show, that some connections were transactions disguised as love. Give them courage to grieve what they're losing. Give them grace to receive what you're sending. Help them make room, clear the table, empty the chairs, so that the healthy relationships you have prepared can finally enter. I pray for rest, Lord, real rest, soul rest, the kind of rest that comes not from doing less, but from no longer pretending, the kind of rest that seeps into bones that have been tired for decades, the kind of rest that only you can give. Teach them that they don't have to earn your love. They never did. They never will. Your love is the foundation, not the reward. Your acceptance is the starting point, not the finish line. Let them feel that love right now. Not as a concept, but as a presence. Not as a doctrine, but as an embrace. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Now don't rush away. Don't click out just yet. Stay still. Let the music carry you. You've spent so much of your life performing, rushing to the next thing, proving yourself to the next person, chasing applause that never came. But right now, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to be anyone. You can just be. This is what freedom feels like. This quiet, this stillness, this absence of striving. Breathe it in, let it settle. Close your eyes, let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw, you've been clenching it, haven't you? Let it go. And as you sit in this stillness, just whisper to God, just 3 words. Thank you. Thank you for loving me when I didn't perform. Thank you for staying when others left. Thank you for seeing the real me and not looking away. Thank you for waiting patiently while I hid behind the mask. Thank you for this moment of rest. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, walk with God, and remember this. You are loved, not for what you do, for who you are. The performance is over.